Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Friday, October 17th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness. If you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. Secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. Or you can join us live from 11 to noon Central Time during most weekdays. You can go to zoom.us and enter the meeting ID number 853-2357-4173. Or you can call in one of the many numbers they offer and enter the same meeting ID number, 853-2357-4173. And if you call in on the phone, you can hit *6 to toggle in and out of the mute situation. You'll be automatically muted when you join, and if you want to speak up, just hit *6. And or you can join us live with video and sound, etc., or type in the chat room. We will accept all forms of input and view them as a blessing. So what is it you might want to share with us? What would you offer as to insights you've gained from the tools, or questions you have about how to use the tools, or any of the many things that we've shared that I view them as complementary perspectives or tools, whether it's a book or a podcast or a series of YouTube talks, etc. And so last night we had our support group, and we listened to a couple of the old hours from 2022 when I was working through the Way of Mastery with commentary, and also the blog post that J.M. wrote when somebody wrote in and asked him about differences between the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery and which one is right. And he gave a wonderful response about, the basic nature of any deep teaching, and how the teacher, any really good teacher, reaches to the audience, the student, wherever he or she is. And and then understands that there's a process that's needed to help any person build new awareness. Michael Ryce would call it build new brain cells, have experiences that usher them into a different experience of life. And the recognition that the same material can be presented to the same person on different days, different weeks, different months, or years later, and get an entirely different response. I mean, it'll land differently, it'll have a different meaning, it'll get in, it'll make more sense to the person, or the reverse. It used to make sense and now it doesn't make sense anymore. So again, I just say I found the most benefit by looking at the similarities between the great teachings rather than trying to decide which one's right and which one's wrong by focusing on the differences that they might display. So we have plenty of time for comments or questions. It's a Friday, so we're going to gear up for a nice weekend, and occasionally I'll share different podcasts that I run across. And the one that caught my eye and ear this morning is called It Was Said. And it's a podcast you can tap into. It's hosted by John Meacham, Jon Meacham. And what they've done is collected at least 10 famous speeches from America and our history and done a podcast about the speech, about its importance, about the context in the country at the time, etc. And it begins with the last speech given by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it includes talks by President Obama, Meghan McCain, Ronald Reagan, Edward R. Murrow, Barbara Jordan, Hillary Clinton, John Lewis, John F. Kennedy, etc. So for those who want to be well-read and informed about our culture, about our history, about our country, you might enjoy that podcast. It Was Said by John Meacham. Apparently there are 2 seasons. So not anybody raising a hand, I think I'll return to reading from the book by Guy Finley with Dr. Ellen Dickstein. Part of me wants to get pulled away to other things, and part of me wants to finish this book, make the commitment to get all the way through and see if we can't discern some powerful threads that they're weaving through the book titled One Love, One Life, One Journey by Guy Finley with Dr. Ellen Dickstein. And we're just about halfway through the book now, and we're reading a chapter titled Darkness and Light. And he starts the chapter with one of his quotes. The growth of our soul rarely unfolds in a light that we recognize as such. Many times, darkness is the medium, sorrow is the seed, and the subsequent humility conceived in these trials is the divine garden in which flowers our soul. So our soul flowers in the garden of humility and the tension of the trials that life brings to us. And again, we talk about this, just the shift that happens if I use the phrase, this happened to me, versus this happened and I experienced it, or this happened for me. Life unfolds, and ancient wisdom says God is no respecter of persons, right? Nature doesn't care how good you were growing up. If it's going to have a thunder and lightning storm and knock down trees, it's going to do it whether you were a philanthropist or, a mass murderer. It doesn't matter. So what if, since these things are just going to happen, what if I refuse to go into the blame game that my culture has trained me into, and I look at everything that happens as the gift of life, presenting me an opportunity to respond lovingly rather than fearfully? What if each new moment I think in terms of how can I choose for love in this moment over fear or over anger or over hurt or confusion? So then Guy goes on and titles the next section, The Global Awakening, Your Role in Transformation. And he writes, the darkest time of the year in the Northern Hemisphere is in the month of December, culminating with the winter solstice, the day with the least sunlight. But that is it's the very moment that indicates a turning point and the coming of the light. In religions and cultures around the world, the dawning of light represents the birth of a new, higher consciousness. Here are some examples. From a Judaism psalm, your work is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. In the New Testament, Jesus spoke to them saying, quote, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And then from Hinduism, the Upanishad, the quote is, him the sun does not illuminate, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor the lightning, nor verily fires kindled upon the earth. He is the one light that gives light to all. He shines, everything shines. And then from the Quran, God is the light of the heavens and the earth. And from Buddhism, it is wonderful, Lord. It is wonderful, Lord. It is as if, Lord, one might set upright that which had been upturned, or might reveal what was hidden, or might point out the path to one who had gone astray, or might bring an oil lamp into the darkness so that those with eyes might see material shapes. And then from Native American religions, Black Elk speaks, I am blind and do not see the things of this world, but when the light comes from above, it enlightens my heart and I can see, for the eye of my heart sees everything. And Guy writes, be an instrument in the great song. We are, at our innermost core, instruments of the divine. Now, just think if you could explore this question for yourself. Is it possible that whatever the negative thoughts are that are in your head, they're all false, and the truth of it is you are an example of the miracle of the creative energy expressing in form? The complexities that your body and mind are capable of still baffle our scientists, our greatest scientists. What if you could see yourself as an expression of the divine light manifesting in the physical realm? What if you could be actively observing and questioning that for yourself day in and day out? That alone, I would offer, would change your experience of life radically, dramatically. The line is, we are, at our innermost core, instruments of the divine. The divine what? The divine energy, the divine love, the divine consciousness, the divine intelligence. He writes, and the divine is the absolute, the total potential realms of all that is light and dark. We are unique creatures in the secret essence of this unending expanse, because not only are we the living instruments of all possible reflections, along with their corresponding intonations, but we may know that we sing, in quotes, sing these colors. We may realize these timeless songs of living light have their secret origin in the very center of our being. What is it that gives rise to you? What is it that makes it possible for you to be aware of your existence and the existence of your fellow travelers? If you can live in the questioning about that, if you can live open to questioning it and observing it, your life will be different. He writes, the peace of God is the song of all his spheres. It is the music they intone as they spin and spread themselves throughout his universe. Each orb of cold, dark, dense matter, or radiant, light-streaming sun, pulsates to the rhythm of its own heart, each sounding out its unique song until these tones merge as variegated hues of light upon the perfectly white pages of the book of life. All as one, they sing the celestial notes of a harmony which is heard only by the angels on high. Nevertheless, these same eternal chords sound in us, and therein they call to us to lend ourselves to these transforming intonations. Listen. The sounds of love will make you their instrument and pour peace through you like a breath of fresh air passes through the waiting flute. But don't try to sing, and fear not the presence of sharps and flats or even the passing tone of some sweet whole note of joy, for the one who sings has composed this entire symphony just for you. Just wake up, open up, let yourself be played. Right? This is what Dale Allen Hoffman talks about in a lot of his talks. You are not the one living a life. You are the one who is capable of being an instrument of life. Something is breathing you. Something is looking at the world through your eyes. Something is keeping your heart beating. And that something is the energy of life itself that has created and sustains everyone and everything. What if you were able to go through the day with some vague or bright level of awareness that says, I am at my innermost core an instrument of the divine. The divine what? The divine life, the divine intelligence, the divine awareness, the divine energy, the divine consciousness. Interesting. Maybe you'll spend part of a day trying to keep that thought top of mind and just watch what it does to the manufacturing of your experience of life in the next few moments. Guy Finley goes on in the next section. He titles it, Unmask the Hidden Cause of Needless Suffering. He writes, there is an unseen source of daily suffering that is the constant companion of humanity. It is, in one respect, one of the great driving forces behind the darkness that encompasses this planet, as in the unremitting wars, the violence, the greed, the fear, the desperation, all the things we see in the world around us. There is an unseen source of that daily suffering. He writes, the source of what makes this world sick lives in the consciousness of ours. It isn't some random effect. It is the wave of what happens when humanity, being asleep to itself in the river of time, humanity is carried off by a host of concerns, each seeming to be different. These frightening things appear just as a nightmare when we, in our unconscious state, are carried off into the laws and the actions that govern the world beneath us. However, we can see that it's a source of punishment because of how thankful we feel to wake up from the bad dream. So, what is this unseen source of human suffering? What does it mean to be truly spiritually asleep? We'll call it, for our purposes here, we'll call it a daymare instead of a nightmare. Human beings unknowingly live most of their life in a daymare because there is nothing in it other than what is validating the sense of self they have, the sense of self they derive from being victimized by a seemingly random set of events that they didn't choose. This kind of thing happens all the time. Human beings unknowingly live most of their life in a day nightmare. He calls it a daymare. Because there's nothing in that sleepy state, in that asleep state or nightmare, other than what validates my belief that I'm a victim to the flow of life happening to me. And I certainly didn't choose this, and I certainly didn't choose that. Guy writes, that is one of the problems that keep the suffering in daymares hidden from us. Most of them are so familiar as to just be something we think is just a normal part of life. We're so used to worrying, so used to feeling sorry for ourselves, so used to being afraid. We're used to fretting that we won't have the love or approval of people, and that we must somehow do something about that. We're used to the idea that we're inadequate. We're actually used to all those negative feelings. That's part of what we call life. And it isn't life. It is a daymare taking place. It's a nightmare happening in broad daylight. A daymare is living out a dark negative state and seeing life through the eyes of the dreamer. When you're anxious and in a rush, are you looking at real life? Or are you looking at a series of demands that you take with you into the moment, demands that cannot be met? You actually dream that you don't have enough time to do what you have to do, so that you can enter into the anxiety and then confirm the dreamer's perception of that moment. And the next thing you know, you're doing the dreamer's bidding. You're being cruel, you're hurting yourself, you're rushing around. Daymares are an unseen source of useless suffering that torments all of humanity because humanity remains asleep. You, on the other hand, have the possibility of beginning the process of dying to the dreamer. Release yourself from the level of consciousness that is wrecking your life. And by the way, it's wrecking everyone around you too. It's time for a reality check. whenever you can, as often as you can, have a reality check. Catch yourself getting negative. Catch yourself feeling worried, whatever it is. You can be 5 miles down the river into the negative state, and even at that point, it's possible to exchange the dreamer for a new understanding that, oh my gosh, I have fallen asleep. I'm in a dream. This isn't real. And he writes, that's all you have to do. Recognize that it's a dream, that it's false. He writes, the goodness of understanding the world of dreams lives in a world that dreams can't touch. When you start coming out of that world of dreams, you will more and more instantly recognize when the dream comes on you. Doing this is the same as reaching for the divine. The divine will see that you are sacrificing yourself for the good of this other life, and it will exchange real life for a dream life. Want to know how you can tell when you're not in a daydream anymore? It's when you are all right with everything just the way it is. You're living in the light of a higher understanding. That higher understanding that recognizes all at once, yes, you're in a dream, you're in a stream of time, and things are happening. But that river also runs through you, and the river is not concerned with the individual events that passing time produces. The river is interested in being the world that reveals these events. It's hard to imagine that day will come when every single movement of a thought or feeling that you would ordinarily identify with would be to you as something floating down the river instead of something that carries you away. It may be hard to imagine it, but I guarantee you it's possible. The great sages speak to us from across the centuries, telling of the wondrous transformation that is possible in any moment when we wake up, even in what seems like the darkest time. These great teachers urge us to leave the dream state behind and choose to live fully in the present moment. Here are some inspiring examples. Nathaniel Hawthorne quoted as saying, all gloom is but a dream and a shadow. Cheerfulness is the real truth. And then Henry David Thoreau is quoted as saying, when in some dreadful and ghastly dream we reach the moment of greatest horror, it awakes us, thereby banishing all the hideous shapes that were born of the night. And life is a dream. When the moment of greatest horror compels us to break it off, the same thing happens. We awaken and we see the joy of life. And then he quotes Vivekananda as saying, it is only when everything, even love, fails, that with a flash, man finds out how vain, how dreamlike this world is. And then he catches a glimpse of the beyond. It is only by giving up this world that the other comes. It never comes through holding on to this one. And then he quotes P.D. Ouspensky as saying, if men could see their true position and could understand all the horror of it, they would be unable to remain where they are even for a second. They would begin to seek a way out, and they would quickly find it, because there is a way out, but men fail to see it simply because they are hypnotized. To awaken for man means to be dehypnotized. And then Guy Finley writes, the lesson for us is that when the world seems dark, gloomy, and devoid of possibilities, we would be wise to question, from where comes our understanding of conditions? Is it a clear assessment of what's happening in the moment, or is it a distorted vision of what's happening based on old fears and resentments and familiar responses that have built up in us over time. Which brings us to the most important question of all. Can we wake up and walk away from this kind of useless suffering? The answer is, without a doubt, yes. We can wake up. The only point of talking about waking up is if it is potential. If there is the actual different state of being that we can step into, then it's useful to talk about it. If it's not a real thing, if others haven't achieved it, if there's no potential for us to achieve it, talking about it would be pointless. So again, we're about halfway through the book of One Love, One Life, One Journey by Guy Finley with Dr. Ellen Dickstein. Again, quick reminder, please feel free to unmute and speak up, even if I seem to be on a roll or in the middle of something. Your contributions are welcome indeed. The next section is titled Pain-Free Living, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Times. Sometimes, and as I read that phrase, ancient living for modern times, ancient wisdom, my mind flashed on things like the work of people like Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and archaeologists and anthropologists, and how and the book A New History of Everything. We were talking about some of that last night because I'd mentioned it back in 2022 that I was doing some work with a book titled trying to look it up here. Everything is the title of the book. The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow, W-E-N-G-R-O-W. When I read just now in the book by Guy Finley, the word ancient or ancient wisdom, I flashed on this book and how these two very bright men, some would clearly call David Graeber a genius, they decided to go back and look for evidence for some of the most common theories about who we are as people and how we started as nomads and hunter-gatherers, and then eventually agriculture came on the scene, and that dictated everything about the way our cultures developed, etc. And they have these theories about us as people on the planet, and they went in to dig into to see if it's possible to have a different, more accurate rewriting of our history. And so when I read the word ancient, I thought, there are people who think ancient is 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, around the time of Christ. Or ancient is 3,000 or more years ago, Buddha. Or ancient is 5,000 years ago in the Egyptians. And yet there are people like Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and others who are looking at data points that seem to suggest we have had far more advanced, civilized groups of humanity on this planet over the years that go back 30, 60, 70, 100,000 years. And so I use that kind of an awareness, the awareness that there are people out there looking at these things and raising questions. I use it to just help myself soften up whenever I think I know something and I'm ready to pound my fist on the table and demand that, I know I'm right and the other person's wrong. That I want to soften that position in me. I don't know exactly how it got trained into me so uh, solidly. I was going to say the word viciously, because there were times in my high school years and in my college years where it felt as though, and I was living around people that believed and lived out the idea that you have to get vicious sometimes to stay safe in this world. You've got to, be assertive and demand your rights and, make sure nobody treads on you, kind of thing. And yet that propensity to want to justify my negativity that's been trained into me is a burden. It's a weight. It's an obstacle to living life in peace and to seeing life more accurately. So ancient wisdom, how ancient? Take your pick. He's going back here, past the Upanishads. At the back of the book, I think I mentioned in the beginning that he's got dates of the people that he's quoting from, Lao Tzu and the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and Yeshua and St. Paul, etc. And so it's thousands of years. He's got at least 3,000 or 4,000 years of writings and history that he's quoting for us here. But the essence of it is there are people who are finding data points that suggest that there were even more sophisticated cultures on this planet 5 and 7 and 8 and 10, 15,000 years ago. What's the truth of it? I don't know. But understanding that there are those possibilities is something I use to help myself soften my grip on, I want to be right. And I use it to continually coach myself to soften up, to be gentle, to relax, to understand how little I truly know, and then ask life to teach me in the moment. So he writes, when it comes to psychological pain and spiritual pain, it appears in many different forms: anger, fear, depression, loneliness, regret, guilt, unrequited love, and the list goes on and on. When we are overcome by these emotions, we usually are quick to blame someone or something for the pain we feel. But the question is, does that ever really help? It seems the pain just gets worse. We may keep finding new explanations for it, but does it ever make a lasting difference in our level of pain? We keep getting caught up again and again in this vicious cycle. However, if we look at what the great sages tell us about pain, they point to a new way of understanding and responding to it. Here are some examples. Buddha writes, or was quoted as saying, if you could see things as they are, not as they appear, you would no longer inflict injuries and pains on your own selves. To my eye and ear, this is a reference to, if you wake up and understand that you're connected to everyone and everything, you won't be able to hurt anyone or everything, because that would be like hurting yourself. And if you're awake and aware, you don't intentionally do things that hurt you unless it's in service of a greater good. Then he quotes Marcus Aurelius. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. It is in your power to erase this judgment now. If anything in your own nature gives you pain, who hinders you from correcting your opinion? So here's Marcus Aurelius and his dates were from 121 current era to 180 current era. In this quote, my mind is showing me it's from reading people like this, Marcus Aurelius and others, that I have discerned that the real issue is not the outside event, and the outside event never triggers me. That mechanism that we call me getting triggered involves me choosing an interpretation, a meaning for what I think is happening around me based on what's hitting my senses. And it is that that causes my upset, or resonates the upset that's always in me. And he writes here, if you are pained by what your mind is showing you as any external event, now I'm putting in the words here that my mind is showing me that this is being caused by an external event. He writes, it is not this thing that disturbs you. What is disturbing you is your own judgment about it. So it's the interpretation you choose and place on a situation or an unfolding of life events. That is what's causing your pain. And it is in your power to erase this judgment now. This is Marcus Aurelius. This is a couple thousand years ago, just 100 years or so after the time of Christ. It is not the outside event that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And because it's your own judgment that's giving rise to your disturbance, it is within your power to erase this judgment now. And if anything in your own nature gives you pain, you have the ability to correct it. It's your own nature. You have access to it. You have the choice of focus for your conscious awareness. And then he quotes someone else from the 1600s. The violence that others do to us is often less painful than violence we do to ourselves. And then Arthur Schopenhauer, quote, whether we are in a pleasant or a painful state depends finally upon the kind of matter that pervades or engrosses our consciousness. It's all an inside job, right? That's my interpretation of that last quote. It's all an inside job. My consciousness is something that I can learn to control and shift focus of. And where I focus it, it creates my experience of life. Guy Finley writes, in every case we're told that the better way to approach our pain is to understand the important role our consciousness plays in causing and amplifying our suffering. If we are willing to accept the truth of that, then the next step is to learn how to use that understanding to change our relationship with pain. How do you change your relationship with pain? He writes, the real crisis is in our present level of consciousness and not in the conditions that we serve or the conditions that serve to reveal our consciousness to us. And let there be no doubt, awakening to realize that there are parts of us that are against us can hit us with a jolt. But when we see that these wrong parts have actually created the pains that they then falsely promise to free us of, then we eagerly seek and find the real friend who will bring all pains to an end. And here he capitalizes the word friend when he says real friend. Every day we are attacked by a multitude of pains, so frequent and so familiar, we don't even question them. In fact, we accept them as friends, as something to occupy us. These pains can range from petty irritations to the anxiety we feel every time we write a check and see our bank balance decrease, to the concerns about our health. One of the major sources of pain involves other people and our relationships with them. Every day the storm comes. Some days we can handle it better than others. Some days we can't handle it at all, and we have a breakdown. But no matter how many storms people face and how many breakdowns they have, In most cases, people put on a mask and claim that their lives are okay. They declare that they are in control, and they even resent the fact that the question could have come up. One thing they do to convince themselves that all their emotional reactions make sense is to blame outside situations for the pain they feel. When things get too bad, they may give up the I'm in control mask and put on the I'm depressed mask. This too is only a mask and not an honest self-appraisal, because the person is still blaming the wrong thing for causing this internal state, and the person is failing to take self-responsibility. These conditions can all be changed, but only if we are willing to admit that these revelations about our inner natures are true. What do you mean I've got an angry, irritable little person in me? What do you mean there's a low self-esteem, lack of confidence teenager erupting in me right now when somebody questions my credentials or questions my ability to perform in my stated profession? What do you mean I'm living out my life as a traumatized 6-year-old, 60 years in a row now? What do you mean I can change what I'm experiencing internally simply by shifting the focus of my conscious awareness? These conditions can all be changed, but only if we are willing to admit that when upset comes up in me, it's only a revelation of what's in me. It's not an indictment against the outside world that I think I'm interacting with. I'm in a dream when I'm in pain. This is Michael Rice's early worksheet that said, if I'm in pain, I'm in error. And now the current worksheet says, if I'm in pain, my thoughts are in error, or my thinking is in error. What do you mean if I shift my thoughts, my experience of life will change? He writes, we must pierce through to the heart of the truth of ourselves so that its strength becomes ours. We can start by admitting that the storm comes and knocks us down every day. Then we must find the courage to admit that we must change the way we meet life. We are not supposed to be out changing life and changing what happens in life. We have the capacity to change how we meet life. That's what's in our control. And at that point, if we recognize that we must find the courage to admit that we must change the way we meet life, at that point, we're willing to ask capital T truth to show us how, because we realize that we've always been wrong in the past. My way doesn't work. Life's way always works. Things always work out in life. Not the way my mind thinks they should, but it works out. So at this point, when I get willing to understand that I need to change the way I relate to life and the way I meet life, then I ask life, or capital T truth, or God, or love, capital L love, I ask it to teach me, to show me how I can be a blessing to myself or others. He writes, rightness does exist, and we can be part of it when we stop defending everything that has made us suffer. Rightness in life does exist. The flow of life is right, just as it is, and we can be part of it when we stop defending everything that we believe has made us suffer. He writes, think of something that has been troublesome to you today. Perhaps you've tormented yourself over the question, should I or shouldn't I? Has it ever occurred to you that even that question might be an unnecessary pain? Isn't it the case that what we really want to be free of is the pain we experience when we try to decide what to do to be free of pain? Think about the circular nature of this. Has it ever occurred to you that you don't even need to ask the question, should I or shouldn't I? Isn't it true that what we really want to be free of is the pain that we experience when we're trying to decide how to be free of pain? Or what about the pain we feel when we're concerned about what other people think about us? Have we ever questioned why it matters what they think? Or whether what they think will really change our relationship with ourselves? We get upset when other people don't treat us as we think we deserve, and we fail to see that the pain we feel has nothing to do with them, but is self-inflicted, right? People like the young woman who's isn't it ironic, the musical artist who wrote that. She also wrote the song Madness by Alanis Morissette. And in the song Madness, the lyrics actually say what he's talking about right here. We fail to see that the pain we feel inside of us has nothing to do with the person outside of us, but it is a self-inflicted pain. Guy writes, these are the lessons that our pain can teach us. When we welcome the lesson, we can see that it was we ourselves who caused the storm that we say we have to battle. The experience of every moment of our life is a direct reflection of our nature. Wow. So here's a line in Guy Finley's book that could come directly out of the Way of Mastery. And the line is, we never experience anything that does not arise directly from our own inner life. Life always happens from the inside out. Now, it's not just Guy Finley and it's not just the Way of Mastery that contain this ancient wisdom. It goes back many thousands of years to understand that life is inside job. Our experience of life is created inside us and then projected out into what our mind believes or thinks it can use to make us believe it's happening to us from the outside. Happens from the inside out. What we know and perceive and look for is what we get. This is why in A Course in Miracles, Michael Ryce has a DVD titled Course in Miracles, A New Beginning, and you can buy it off his website. He's got some talks about it that might be on his YouTube channel. But the New Beginning, it's about an hour and 20 minutes, if I remember correctly. Most of his DVDs are 2-hour talks, but this is an older one. And it's the Course in Miracles lesson on a new beginning. And in it, it says, get up in the morning and decide what kind of day you want, what kind of an experience you want to have in your life that day, and then go about your day giving that away. So if you say, I want to have a joyful, respectful, productive day, start handing out the joy, start being productive, start being respectful in your interactions with everyone and everything. As you give it away, you receive it. It's a flow. It's not about giving and taking. It's about the flow of giving and receiving, about waxing and waning. Life always happens from the inside out. What we know, this is from Guy Finley again, what we know and perceive and look for is what we get. The pain we feel as we enter a room and we move self-consciously from the door to a chair is a reflection of what is in us. It's not about what is in the people that we see before us. The fact that we have those pains is proof that we don't understand what our pains are about. If we did understand, we would no longer tolerate their presence in our psychic system. Life really is a kind of special journey whose each and every day can present new vistas to our eager perception. Instead, we live in an unhappy world created by our misperception. And yet, one of the marvels of our lives is that they can undergo a natural healing process when our wish for an awakened consciousness allows capital T truth to shed its curative light. When that happens, even our pains become marvelous, because each one provides a fresh opportunity to learn more about what we've been doing against ourselves. This new knowledge gives us the power we need to cease this self-betrayal forever. We discover that our capital R real, capital F friend, is the capital T truth. And when we live from that truth, the whole universe is on our side. When we live from the capital T truth, in other words, when we recognize that whatever pain we're experiencing is a part of our own self-created misperception, then stopping it is as easy as allowing the next breath to be received and to be appreciated and to be enjoyed. So that's all I'm going to read today, because that's the end of that section, and that takes us just to a minute or two from the end of our time. So come one, come all, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds for anybody to speak up, or we can just acknowledge that we have gratitude for everyone who's been here today, and we appreciate your listening. We will be back on Monday for another week of shows, and we hope you choose to join us. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And if you're going out to participate in some kind of a civic gathering this weekend, may you be well, may you be peaceful, may you be happy. Blessings.